Hey guys, John here from Bring the SEO. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be sharing with you one of the group coaching calls taken directly from inside the community, where I hosted a presentation covering what to do at the very beginning of an SEO campaign. This was requested by one of the members, and I've decided to share it here with my subscribers on YouTube, just to give you an idea of what's inside the program, what you can expect potentially if you sign up and enroll, and the sorts of topics that we cover. Hope you enjoy the presentation, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers. All right, so this topic was requested by Philippa, who essentially asked the question, okay, I get a new client, I sign a new client, where do I start? Obviously, there's going to be far more involved in a campaign that I can cover in, say, a 30-minute presentation. In this presentation, I'm going to be focusing on the macro, so the big items, the most important things. I guess the other consideration, guys, you need to make is the different niches that you operate in. But my intentions with this presentation is to just have you think about the order in which you should be operating, and how you can have more confidence when it comes to starting a new campaign. Right, so where to begin? Action items when starting a new SEO campaign. Can everyone see my screen? Can I just get a thumbs up or something? Yeah, all good? Okay, cool. All right, so it really starts with the initial strategy session. This is extremely important. I know for those of you who take a prospect through the sales presentation and you actually close them, at that point in time, you really have only spoken with them briefly. The point of the initial strategy session is to go deep, right? I may as well just go through my points here. Have them complete the client questionnaire, go deep, gather information, and figure out where the main focus points are, okay? In other words, what's the priority? This client questionnaire is in the resources section, right? So for those of you who are new here, you've pre-qualified, they've qualified, you've taken them through the sales presentation, they've come on board as a paying client. Before you do anything, you have to book the initial strategy session and have this conversation with them. They should have completed the questionnaire before this call is booked. Now, you will find that some of them will do a really half-assed job of filling out the questionnaire, in which case you just go through it with them over during the call. Okay, well, I see this, you haven't answered this question, any reason? Well, that was kind of complicated, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Others at the other will be at the other end of the scale, and they'll bombard you with huge amounts of information, in which you'll then have to cut through a lot of that to get to the stuff that actually matters. But the client questionnaire, guys, it's in the resource section. Make sure this is your first step. Don't get caught up doing audits or looking at their website or starting technical SEO or doing keyword research or anything until you've completed this step. Now, I will say here, the initial strategy session, it's really, really important that you figure out, like I said, you figure out where the main points, the focus points are. What's the priority? In other words, and this is the way I used to word it with clients, where's the money in this for you? What do you want us to focus on when we first get started, right? This is a really important question, and clients will love the fact that you've actually asked it, because most other agencies they've worked with probably haven't even bothered to ask, and I'll just send them a meaningless report, and they'll be thinking, what the hell are we actually paying for? What's going on? I watched a video recently with George Coker. I actually shared it in the group, and the way in which he worded it was, I really liked the way in which he worded it. He said, we have the initial strategy session with the client, and we ask them, hey, tell us what good looks like, right? That's a very simplistic way of saying it, but they'll say, oh, look, if we can sell more blue widgets, that would be awesome. Okay, so you'd like to focus on that? Yes, because we make $8,000 out of those. To give a quick example for the newcomers here, let's say you worked with I'll give you just an industry which I probably wouldn't recommend, but let's say you start working with a plumber, and I may have given this example before. You work with a plumber, you do the first month, and you say, hey guys, we built out all these pages here for leaky taps. Well, shit, that's nice, but that's really not important for us. We want to we would much prefer to focus, you had to focus on block drains because they're like $6,000 or $7,000 a job for us instead of like a $50 job the other, 2 hours the other side of town. So make sure you figure out what the main focus points are. Next is record it. Okay, always ask for permission, but make sure that you record the initial strategy session and so that you're not having to relay that information to your team. Okay, so avoid relaying that information to your team, record it and have them watch it. Especially if there's, web related stuff that's, maybe your web developer needs to take a look at, or your content team. Of course, if your client says we want to focus on widgets, content team needs to know that. So instead of hosting the initial strategy session, taking notes, and then going to your team and giving instructions, one team member at a time, just record it and then pass that on to your team. And then you can have a follow-up meeting with all your team members and go through it together. Now, confirmation, confirm and clarify next steps to ensure clarity and alignment. In other words, okay, got everything we need. This is where you want us to focus. This is where you want us to focus our priorities to begin with. How does that sound? You happy with us? You happy with that? We're all in agreement? Great, let's get started. Okay, campaign preparedness. This is all pretty much housekeeping. But in order to actually be able to do the work without any sort of issues, you'll need to perform these steps. Firstly, confirm access to all required properties. The website, of course, Google Analytics, Search Console. This information is requested within the client questionnaire. So before hosting the initial strategy session, if they give you the usernames and passwords at the bottom of that document, make sure that you check them before you get on the initial strategy session. Otherwise, you'll just find yourself sitting there with the client fumbling around going, oh, where do I get that login? Or hang on a minute, I'll just call my web developer, and you'll just be wasting time. So give them clear instructions. It's all laid out in that client questionnaire. Make sure that you check those logins before you host a strategy session. If for any reason they can't figure out what their logins or the user credentials are, then you may have to help them on the call. Something else you might want to make a note of here, guys, is putting a series of short videos together, helper videos that you can send the client, right? Okay, you don't know how to assign us full admin rights in Google Analytics. Go here and watch this video, right? And you can have a series of videos on instructions as to how they can give you full admin access and set up an account within WordPress and all of those other things, so that you're not repeating yourself over and over and over again. Little details like that, guys, you should always be looking for those bottlenecks or those constraints and saying, okay, how can we do this better? How can we implement these little things going to help us overcome these obstacles? Next, campaign resources. So set up a dedicated section on Google Drive. If you're using Dropbox, you can do that too. But for every single campaign, you should be using the same documents, and those same documents should go up into a dedicated section, and that should all be structured in a way in which you understand where everything is, and so do your team members. And it should always be the same. Every single campaign needs to be the same. If you've got files and folders and stuff going everywhere, it'll be an absolute nightmare, and you'll spend all of your time helping your staff. Oh, John, where's this? And John, where's that? Don't do that. Client portal, for those of you who are new to the group, you probably don't want to know what I'm talking about, but there's great software that you can use. It's called, go to clientportal.io. This will allow you to set up client portals or dashboards where you can centralize everything for the client. Do not run your business through email. Clients should be given one username and password and the login details for client portal, and you say to them, everything you need for the campaign is going to be in here, right? Log in there. How does, like, booking calls, reports, and everything else that they need, centralize it all together. Within client portal, you can actually set a template and you can replicate that template. If you're working in the same niche over and over and over again, it should be an absolute no-brainer. And of course, your project management software, right? I know I use Asana, or I was using Asana. Within Asana, the same thing. You can set up campaign checklist. There is an SEO campaign checklist in the resources section. Download it. I believe, or at least It's been a little while since I did this. I'm pretty sure you can upload a CSV file into Asana. You can probably do this with other project management tools also. Get a template in place for all of your campaigns so that when a new client comes on board, you just go replicate, you change the name to their business, and away you go. Lastly, tech, set up monitoring within Ahrefs for obvious reasons. You want to know if they're getting blasted with shitty links or if links are being lost. Uptime Robot is a great tool to look for web outages, website outages. I worked on a campaign many years ago and the client said, oh, look, this is all great. We were going through the work summary sheet together and the client said, oh, this is all great, John, but the site's been down for like 2 weeks, I think. And I was like, what the fuck? And I realized like the site was down. So you've got to keep an eye on the client's website. Use Uptime Robot. It's a free tool. It will notify you if the site goes down. It's pointless doing all of this work, especially when we're trying to drive conversions and focus on ROI, if the site's going down every 5 minutes. And lastly, and most importantly, performance site backup, guys. I saw someone recently in one of the Facebook groups saying, I've just picked up a big client. I've made some changes to the site. The site's crashed. I'm locked out of admin console. I don't have FTP access or anything. What the hell am I going to do? He took the whole site down. This site was like, it was a big site and they were doing big numbers. He was absolutely panicking. So always perform a site backup. I know Ben's probably laughing at that one, but you know what it's like, Ben. If you don't, guys, don't be trying to do this stuff yourself. Get dedicated tech people, web designers, web developers that know how to do this stuff for you.
I wanted to add to that. Managed WP or WP or remote are really good for that.
All right, dude, maybe post it in the chat and I'll add it to the notes after in the class replay. But definitely perform a site backup. Okay, order of implementation. This is a 10,000-foot view of how you should be approaching every single SEO campaign, regardless of the niche. Number one, audit. Perform an initial assessment of current standings and identify issues that may require immediate attention. Okay, so you've held the initial strategy session. You've got all the information you need from the client. You've got access and you've got everything set up. The first thing you need to do is take a look at their existing standings or website performance. Now, I just want to make a quick note here, guys, that this does not mean performing a traditional SEO audit. This might go against the grain somewhat, and I know I've upset a lot of people by saying this, but I'm not a fan of doing SEO audits. And I learned this many years ago when I thought, okay, well, I need to do an audit and let the client know what's wrong with the website and why it's not performing. And I spent about 3 days doing this huge audit. I followed a checklist, really small details. And I put this big fancy report together and I sent it to the client and I said, we're paying you to fix these problems, not tell us what we already know. And I thought, fuck, what am I doing? I was simply doing an SEO audits because everyone else was doing them. So when I say perform an initial assessment, I mean, look at the big things, right? Has the site been hacked? Are there obvious issues on site where like there's no phone numbers, there's no contact forms? Does the site have a toxic link profile? Are there all sorts of warnings going off in Search Console, right? You're just looking for big things, big problems. You don't want to spend 3 days putting an SEO audit together, polishing it up and feeling clever about it, because that's not going to move the needle, okay? Don't spend time worrying about, telling the client, you've got no title tags on your images. Forget about that small stuff. So the initial assessment should only take you about maybe an hour, okay? Check all of the big ticket items. The next thing, point 2, this is step 2 or phase 2, if you like. Always prioritize on page first before anything else, right? And I'll get to this in a second. Start with site structure and core page content. I'm going to expand on this in just a minute to explain what I mean. Point 3, this is phase 3. You'll then move into off-page and ongoing content. So off-page optimization, links and ongoing content, blog posts, Q&As or videos, whatever sort of content it is that you're producing as part of your service offering. But do it in that order. Initial assessment, on page, then off page and content. Okay, tracking. Rule number 1. Implement conversion tracking on site as quickly as possible. You've got to set up conversion tracking, guys. Calls, sales, emails, purchases. If you're doing, if you're involved in e-commerce, it's incredibly important that you do this as quickly as possible, even if the site's a mess. Try to do whatever you can to get some sort of tracking in place, right? I'll expand on more on this in just a second. Goals. So set up and test goals within Google Analytics. Plug in a data studio in readiness for end of month reporting. What you're essentially trying to do, this is the whole point of doing this, right? Is to establish a baseline. You want to establish a baseline as a point of reference so you can see campaign improvement over time. You want to implement tracking as soon as possible so that, and I'll tell you why, guys. Years ago, I was working on a campaign. The site was a mess. And I said to the client, we really need to fix this site. I'm not going to be able to get the results you're after working on this crappy site. Anyway, we spent like 3 months fixing the website. I launched the new website, implemented tracking and everything else. And then I went to the client and said, here we go. Look at these great results. And he said, oh, we were kind of already getting that before. I had no point of reference. So it's really important that you capture that data at the beginning so that you can clearly demonstrate and say, okay, when we first started working together, you were getting 25 calls a month. Now we're getting 400. Okay, so don't put that off. Do it as quickly as possible. Okay, guys, site restructuring. This falls in line with point 2 here, right? So on page. All right, site restructuring. Restructure the site first before doing anything. I can't stress this enough, guys. Think about it like building a house, right? You start with the foundations and you build up the framework, the planning, the framework, and everything else. Most SEO agencies don't bother. They'll start creating content. They'll start optimizing, title tags, and they'll start creating blog posts. None of that makes any sense. Because I can tell you through experience that most sites that you pick up will be an absolute mess. They'll either be under-optimized or they'll be over-optimized. And sometimes being over-optimized is worse. But in any case, restructure the site first before doing anything, okay? You don't build a house by building the roof first, okay? You've got to get the planning and the structure and the framework together first. And then you can worry about, carpets and curtains and tiles and everything else. My next point here is site quality. You want to improve organization and make site management easier. Okay, it's going to be easier for the site owner, the client, to be able to understand where everything is if it's all categorized correctly. And it's also going to make things easier for you and your team as well. Consolidating. Next point, consolidating. Reducing where possible and consolidating or removing redundant categories and pages. This probably feeds into sites that are over-optimized. Obviously, if you pick up a site and it's like eight pages, well, then you won't need to consolidate much. But if you pick up a site and there's 300 pages, chances are there's probably about 180 of those pages are actually doing anything. And the rest of it is just over-optimization. And possibly there's a bit of cannibalization going on, duplicity, all sorts of nonsense. You'll see a recurring theme, when I do these classes, no matter what I talk about, it's all about less, not more. So taking a site, and I'll show you a visual graphic in just a minute, taking a site where there's 1 million pages and maybe some of those pages, there's 2 pages that are very similar. Your objective when you're restructuring the site is to get it down, get it organized, and get it clean. Now, link equity, maximizing both internal and external link equity, okay? Again, if you've got pages and categories flying all over the place, you're going to have link equity that is diluted and potentially being lost because it's pointing all over the place. It's much better to have, I'll give you a pretty simple explanation, but let's say that you put, I don't know, 50 buckets outside and you ran around with a hose, you might get like an inch of water in each bucket, as opposed to having, 2 buckets, which you're going to fill those buckets up. That's the way in which I think about link equity, right? I've got a really great graphic that I put together explaining this visually, which I couldn't find before while I was putting this presentation together. Maybe if I find it, I'll share it in the group. But when you reduce the size, the site's footprint, you'll be able to maximize internal and external link equity. So the links that you do drive will have more impact. Okay, here's a visual representation, and I share this in the group, right? This is fairly typical for what you'll see when you pick up a new site. Most sites aren't built with any sort of planning in mind. They're just kind of thrown together, and maybe the site owner has done it. Maybe they've worked with shitty SEO agencies in the past. Someone's created a category and, oh, hang on a minute, now we're going to sell this other thing. So we create a new category here and maybe we need some pages, and it just turns into an absolute mess. It's your job to take it from that and turn it into something that looks like this. When you've got it down to something that looks like this, it's going to be beneficial for all of the reasons that I just touched on. Okay, when it comes to site restructuring, best practices, always back the site up first before pulling it apart. We've kind of already touched on that. Set up a staging area, guys. Register any old domain. Like I've got websample.com.au. You can register, Suzanne's sandpit, do whatever you need to, but just register a domain where you can throw all of your templates. And when you hire a web developer and they're starting to do the transfers and the migrations to your templates and everything else, you got somewhere to do that. But in any case, always restructure in a staging environment. Don't ever try and restructure a site live. Look, if you've got a site and it's like 10 pages and you just want to like move 2 or 3 pages, you can probably do that fine, especially if there's getting no traffic. But you certainly don't want to be doing that if you're working on a large site that's doing, $10,000 a day, because you'll end up breaking something. You'll get yourself into a mess, and you'll be thinking, holy shit, John was right. I probably should have been doing this in a staging environment. Make sure, guys, when you set up and you start restructuring or performing a step in a staging environment, that you make changes to the header or the footer and make it a bright green or a bright red, so that you don't accidentally start working on the live site. I've done this before. We spoke about this last week. If you've got 2 sites that are identical, you can actually jump in and, oh shit, this is the live site. Whoops. Don't do that. The other thing that I was going to say there, which has I'll move on. It might come to me. But always restructure in a staging environment. Okay, when it comes to planning, keep it simple. Plan it out using the site restructure planner. It's in the resources section. It's a dedicated, Excel or Google Sheet rather, that will allow you to list down all of the existing URLs and all of the new URLs, along with action items in the middle. What needs to happen with this URL? Do we need to delete it? Does it need to be consolidated? Does it need to be redirected, or do we just leave it alone? I'll show you a screenshot of that resource in just a second. One thing that I will say here, guys, with the when it comes to planning out site structure, I'm a big fan of doing it in Notepad, right? Don't get caught up trying to do it on the live site or putting complicated spreadsheets together or anything like that. Yes, you can use the restructuring, the site restructure planner once you've got it mapped out, but I like the simplicity and the speed of Notepad, because you can just blast all the links down and you can start categorizing and moving them around. I cover this in the training. I can't remember which module it is. I think it's site structure and something to do with speed. I don't know. Maybe Angie can help me out. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's in there, right? I demonstrate how this process works. And my last point here, always work towards less, not more. Okay. If you've got a site about shoes, then you don't need to create a million URLs for one type of shoe. Blue size 10, blue size 9, blue size 7, blue size 6. Don't do that, guys, right? You want less, not more. That's just over optimization. Next, when it comes to working through the site restructuring phase, communication is key. So always make sure you keep clients informed. And when you're about to make the changeover, so you've restructured the site, it's in the staging environment, and you intend on going live, make sure you schedule a time with the client to do that. Don't just roll the site out without them knowing, because if they're doing something at their other end, or they've organized some big promotion and the site suddenly goes down, there'll be tears. The other thing that I will say is this: avoid rollouts on Friday afternoons or Monday mornings. Don't ever roll a site out on like a Friday afternoon, because guess what? If something goes pear-shaped, no one's going to be around. Everyone's going to be at the beach or not going night clubbing or something. And you're going to be sitting there with no support. The site's going to be down, and you're going to have someone that's very, very angry because you've taken down all of their email and everything else. Likewise, with Monday mornings, you'll probably find for most site owners, their busiest times will be Monday mornings. If not, this is why you need to communicate and say, guys, all right, I've got the new site ready, the new structure, all of our calls to action, it's all ready to go. When do you feel would be the best time for us to roll this out? And they will tell you, oh, maybe Wednesday nights are usually pretty quiet and I can be here to help, right? I've always found it's best to let the client know when it's going to happen and have them on standby in case you need help, okay? I worked in IT for 9 years, so this is a bit of IT coming out here. Next point here, always have a rollback strategy in place to prevent outages and downtime, okay? If you get halfway through the migration of the site and something goes wrong and you aren't able to roll back within minutes, again, there's going to be tears, okay? So if you aren't proficient in this, then make sure that you hire someone who is, right? Any professional web developer will be able to do this for you, but always have the old site ready so that you can just roll back. This happened to me about 2016, and I hate telling the story. It was incredibly painful. I think I was working with WP Engine, which is a really shit hosting provider. They don't have cPanel. And I was FTPing the files up, and something went wrong, and all of the files got corrupted. And I didn't go to bed for 3 days because I took down the entire site. No one could call. Their emails went down, and trying to get WP Engine on a support call or a phone call was impossible. I didn't have a backup of the old site. Don't make that mistake. Now, preservation. This is also important. Preservation. Always check these things before you start deleting pages and pulling a site apart. Always check traffic. Firstly, you don't want to be deleting pages that are actually performing and getting traffic. Links. You don't want to be blowing pages away where they've got inbound links. And also, if possible, this isn't always possible because no one usually tracks anything. But you don't want to be blowing pages and categories away if they're actually converting. I'll give you an example. Oh, this page is only getting 5 visits a month. Let's just kill it. Oh, and then you'll get on a call with the client. I'll say, oh, hang on a minute. What happened to that page there? Oh, we blew it away because it wasn't getting any traffic. Well, hang on a minute. That page used to bring us in like $8,000 jobs. Holy shit. Whoops. So don't do that either. Okay. It can be hard to know if a page is converting. This is where probably communication with the client. Okay, I'll give you a bit of a heads up, guys. Let me take a sip of my tea here and I'll give you some advice. When it comes to site restructuring, it's always a good idea to it's always a good idea to get the client's involvement, but sometimes that can turn out to be a nightmare, because you'll get caught up in interference. They'll say, oh, no, we need this page and we need this section and we don't want to remove this. And they'll end up taking over, they'll end up driving campaign direction, and that can turn into an absolute mess. At the same time, if you're not sure about new sections in which you're going to get rid of, then you've got to ask them. Okay, just make sure that you don't lose control. Does that all make sense? All right, guys. Here is a screenshot of the site restructure planner. This is the Google Sheet that's available in the resources section. And you can see here, it's very straightforward, number of referring domains, if there are any backlinks, what category it's in, the existing URL. This is where you'll go through and you'll see that, you know, pages are over optimized, or there's no thought, or maybe there's pages that are very similar. It's your job to go through and clean them up and make everything nice and neat, right? You can see how I've converted some of these pages and brought them across and made them, you know, categorize them correctly. A lot of people in the SEO space will get caught up in silly names and acronyms and, hey, let's talk about silos. It's all the same shit. I've been doing this long enough to know that it's just page categorization. But that's a quick screenshot of the site restructure planner. Make sure you use it, guys. It'll help you, right? You can see here, like, what's the action item? We need to redirect this. With this page is unchanged, we need to get rid of these pages rather than just trying to do it on the fly. Okay, next point, optimizing for conversions. Remember, guys, especially for the new members, we're not selling rankings. We want to help our clients make money. Okay, so for those of you who are still thinking about SEO in the traditional sense, just ranking first page, you need to let that go and start thinking about how can we drive conversions and help our clients make money through organic search. This is a message that I've been pushing now for many years. I've taken a lot of heat for it, but this is why I talk about conversion rate optimization. It's much easier and faster to take a site from 0.5% conversions up to, say, 5%. That's like essentially getting 5 times the amount of traffic. And I think I've probably said this a number of times also. It's much easier to make use of the traffic that the clients already have rather than just try to get more traffic and rank for more keywords. First thing, standardized page layout. Standardized page layout and navigational elements. This kind of falls under information architecture, but you want to make sure that regardless of where a user is on the site, whether they're on the about page or they're on, you know, a blog post, the look and feel and layout of that page is almost identical. And I'll share the reasons why in just a second. It's got to do with conversions. You don't want people becoming confused and so forth, because you'll lose them. And probably that feeds into my next point, right? You want to improve user experience by simplifying usability. All the pages essentially look the same and people know where the elements are. Okay, information's on the left, call to action on the right, or if they're on mobile, call to actions at the top, information below. Anytime, and Google is probably a great example of this, anytime you start using a platform where the navigation's up the top and maybe the navigation's on the left and then it's on the bottom and wait, where's the phone number? That's going to cost you conversions. So you want to standardize all of your page layouts. Conversion, like my next point here, conversion rate optimization, maybe it could have listed this as calls to action. Add clear calls to action, excuse me, in order to increase conversion rates. And I'll show you a couple of examples of that in a moment. And my last point here, and this is incredibly important, control. I want everyone to take notes on this one. Control conversion points and track properly. Now, if you go to most websites, they will have phone numbers and email addresses floating around all over the place. There'll be an email address in the footer and there'll be phone numbers in the content. We don't want that. It's incredibly important that we control the conversion points because we want to know what's going on in terms of, you know, inquiries, phone calls, sales, and everything else. If someone is able to just click a link on a page at random and send an email, we don't know about it, and that's not really helpful in any way, because we won't be able to go to the client and say, okay, this month we got 600 email inquiries if we've lost 300 of them to some random or naked email address. Does that make sense, guys? This is really important because most sites that you go to, there'll be a naked email address in the footer, or there'll be phone numbers, like even email addresses and phone numbers in the meta tags. Get that shit out of there. You want to be able to control it so that you can actually demonstrate ROI for your clients. Okay, here's a couple of quick sites that I threw up. This is pretty much a standard that I follow for all of my clients' sites. You know, my web developer just put together a whole bunch of templates. Sometimes the form's on the right, sometimes it was on the left. Doesn't really matter. In any case, simple things, guys. It's going to help drive conversions. And if we're responsible for those conversions, then we can charge a premium. We'll be able to demonstrate ROI, and the client will be happy to pay a premium for our services, because unlike just sending them a keyword report and saying, oh, your first page for fluffy bunnies, we can go to them and say, all right, guys, this month we got 400 inquiries, which should be X dollars. Here's another example. Now, the reason I wanted to show a homepage and also the inner pages is because every single page should contain a call to action. In other words, it doesn't matter where someone lands, if they land on the About page or a blog post or a product or a service page, there should be a clear call to action there. We want to maximize conversions, okay? And all of these conversion points should be tracked. I can't remember which module it is off the top of my head, but I show you how to set tracking up using Google Analytics for web forms and also phone calls. I don't know if I need to get into call tracking here, but everyone in this community should be using a service like CallRail to start tracking calls as well. We need to know what's going on. You can't just be hoping and praying that the client is happy. We need to know. Okay, next point here, and I know Angie might get a giggle out of this because I hate this topic, but citations, once you have completed site restructuring and you've got these calls to action in place and you've got tracking set up, for local SEO, obviously, you want to start thinking about citations. For this, I would just outsource it. I know we've spoken about this before. Outsource this to a third-party service provider. Maybe some of the guys in the group will make some recommendations around that. But make sure that it's a cleanup service, like they're going through the citations and they're not just creating new listings. They're actually finding existing listings and sorting them out. And of course, when it comes to citations, I always prepared and delivered a password inventory sheet to the client, because when you pick up clients and you start the process of citations, almost always they will say, oh, I don't know, we don't have the passwords for that some other SEO agency set it up. So then you end up in a case where you've got like 10 listings for the same business on yellow pages, and all of them have different usernames and passwords. Don't continue that mess. Okay, initial content. What do I mean by initial content? Initial content, well, I'm just going to read from my notes here. Always prioritize content at the core first. So initial content is like the core pages: home, about, contact, maybe the privacy or service pages, probably to a lesser extent with that stuff, main products and service pages. What do I mean by that? What I'm saying is this: it doesn't make sense for you to start saying, okay, well, let's start creating some blog posts and let's maybe, do a Q&A session and do some blog posts with the client if the information on the homepage is incomplete or wrong. Okay, you've got to work from the inside out. So focus on the core pages first. Okay, let me see if I can go back here and get that graphic up. So if we were to think about the core pages, like this may not be the best example, but under maybe the next level down might be about, frequently asked questions, contact, and so on. I think you guys know what I mean, right? So it makes sense to focus on that stuff first, and then on the pages below that. It doesn't make sense. Oh, let's start optimizing content down here for something that's completely irrelevant, especially, like I said, if the content on the home page or the about pages is wrong. Usually for those core pages, you can blast through that stuff in the for a first or second billing cycle. You don't need to spend 6 months mucking around there. And of course, even at that level, when it comes to sorting out your core pages, consolidate, improve, prune and remove content where necessary. Okay, this should all probably be done when you work your way through the site restructuring phase. Okay, so we're getting off to the tail end here now, but this falls in line with point 3 that I touched on, or phase 3 rather, which I touched on just a moment ago. Off-page and ongoing content. So when you've completed all of those steps, and don't forget, you'll have technical SEO, of course, your meta titles and on-page and everything else, and other things like site speed. When the campaign becomes established, you'll find yourself in what I call the holding pattern, right? And this is where you implement ongoing content marketing and link building. And essentially all you're doing here is cycling through every single month. Content, links, content, links, content, links. And you're don't forget, you're still tying your efforts into revenue. If you're doing that well, then there should be no reason for the client to want to stop. Okay, unless you're doing too good of a job and they can't handle all the inquiries or sales coming through, which I've experienced. In any case, commence ongoing content with focus on areas of most importance, right? Notice there I emphasize areas of most importance, okay? As an example, if the client has said to you, okay, Anthony, we want to sell more blue widgets. You would start with the core pages first, then you would you would focus probably on your category page for blue widgets, and then you would say, okay, great, let's start thinking about what content we can publish in the blog that's based upon maybe frequently asked questions that people have about blue widgets, right? And then I think I talk about this in the training, right? The blog really should be the engine. But this isn't just about creating, blog posts for the sake of creating blog posts. This should tie in directly with which areas the client wants to focus on. Okay, and the same is true for your off-page. So when it comes to prospecting, outreach, link building, and so forth, you want to focus on those areas as well, because you want to be able to drive or improve the performance of those areas of the website within search, in order to help the client sell more blue widgets. Okay, a couple of quick tips. Guys, I know I've been saying this a lot, but use templates, right? You can 10x efficiency and prevent repetition using pre-built niche-specific templates that you can simply install. You do not want to be doing this, what I've just explained to you right now, over and over and over again. It's exhausting. And this is why, Suzanne, yesterday when we started exchanging comments in your welcome thread, and I apologize if we got a little bit off topic there, I really wanted to drive home the importance of just doing one thing and doing it well. Because if you're working with, a million different people in a million different industries, you'll have to pretty much do this manually every single time. If you have pre-built niche-specific pre-built templates, you've already restructured. You've already got the calls to action. You've already got tracking. You've already got an idea of where you can get links and what type of content and everything else. So all you're doing there is replacing rather than repairing. So use templates, guys. Next, speed is of most importance. So move quickly. Excuse me. Move quickly and focus on tasks that have the greatest impact in order to drive early results. Right? Don't muck around doing wasting the first billing cycle doing an SEO audit. Okay, move quickly. Like using a pre-built template, shifting all of the information across, adding those calls to action. Like you can move the needle pretty fast when you do these things. And lastly, don't overlook this. Identify opportunities where you can drive conversions quickly. Okay, if you've got a bunch of stuff that, is maybe just sitting at the top of page 2, and even if that doesn't fall in line with what the client is wanting to focus on, if you've got a bunch of stuff that's like teetering on the, maybe the top of page 2, if we want to talk in those terms, then it might be a good idea to say to the client, listen, I think with a little bit of work here, we can push this thing over. What do you think? So look for quick wins. All right, guys, that's it. Hope you all found it useful. Happy to take questions, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John. is exactly what I asked for and really, really helpful. So
Yeah, that's really good.
basically just thank you.
Actually, can I get, before we jump into questions, maybe let's go around. I heard of this strategy. I don't know if it's a thing or not. Give me your biggest takeaway. Let's go one at a time. Can we do this? Give me your biggest takeaway. What was the biggest takeaway you got out of that presentation? Who wants to go first?
Oh, call to action, John. So like, prior to you saying, have the, on the right hand side or left hand side of the hero image when you first come in, I used to set mine up where like every like page folder, if you had a lot of content on that page, it's have like request more information, you hit it and it goes straight down to your call to action form. So you still would get the tracking, with your phone number, and that still would work. We're not doing that type of way if you set up in a sales letter type situation.
Sorry, was that a question?
No, I like the idea.
Yeah.
On the hero image.
Yeah.
I've always set it up like, like you you're below fold. So there might be the first lot of content and then like request more information. You click that link and it takes you down the bottom if you got like quite a bit of content on that page.
Okay, cool. So calls to action. Suzanne, what was your biggest takeaway from that?
I'm probably earlier in the process than a lot of the others. So for me, it's the focus on systemizing and pushing everyone through the same process. So I've done that with other businesses, but as you know, with SEO, everyone has slightly different requirements when you land on their website. So the temptation is to do it in all sorts of order. So, going through a methodical checklist, I like that.
Yeah, following a repeatable process is like you need to start thinking about your agency like an assembly line. You're making that you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. And I get a lot of resistance and pushback about that. But there's no way you can actually scale and make it work if you're working on one-time projects and everything has custom requirements. You'll lose your mind. I've been there twice. Corey, what was your biggest takeaway, dude?
Yeah, I heard a lot of this before through the training. The biggest one was the site restructuring, doing that first. I was knew there was some missing piece to it. I'm like, it just doesn't make sense. It's so confusing to I gotta somehow create these pages that don't exist and get content and then structure it and images. I'm like, it's so confusing to do all at once.
Yeah.
I'm like, the site restructure is just you just do that all. Yeah. It makes it so much easier.
It's like building a house, right? So for you're probably feeling like a painter. You've been hired to come in and paint a house, and fuck, where are the walls? You're standing with a roller like, I know I'm going to paint something here, but where's the walls? So it's just like building a house, right? Even if you go to further again with that analogy, like the foundation, the concrete slab, that really is like your hosting and domain. This is why I talk about uptime robot. It's pointless like building a house in sand. The site's going down every 5 minutes. It doesn't matter how well you do your job. What did you get, Jim? What's your biggest takeaway, dude? Jimmy?
I really like what does good look like.
Yeah, I like that too.
Understanding where the money is, and then using the baseline as well to get a point of reference for that, and you could always put it back to the client, couldn't you? You're only getting, I don't know, say money to you looks like I don't know, selling a bathroom each month. Then when you've worked out the conversions, you'll be able to see the point of reference, you'll be able to see how many they actually have. So.
Yeah, having that starting point, like that baseline, is critical. I made that mistake, and the client was like, no, we already had that before. I was like, what are you talking about? And I didn't have anything to reference. So I made sure immediately I set up tracking. Even if the site was broken and they didn't want to use templates, I tried. It was really hard to set up some kind of tracking so I could understand what was going on. And once they saw, oh shit, okay, we're converting at 0.6%. We got a problem. Because clients can't argue with data. Some do, but you can't go to clients with fluffy nonsense and just hopes and dreams. Like you've got to be able to show that, okay, this is what's going on.
That's-
Anyone
that's-
else? Go for it, Jimmy. Sorry.
So I was just going to say, I spoke to somebody yesterday who's paying out. He's a bathroom showroom. He's paying two grand a month. I said, "How's it going?" He said, "Oh yeah, it's going great. I've got loads from Google." And I said, like, "How do you know that? Like, how do you know where they're coming from?" He's like, "Well, I don't. All I know is that I'm ranking high, so I must be getting loads from Google." So his eyes were open to the fact that he doesn't really know that where they're coming from.
Yeah, you get that a lot. It's like companies who run ads, they'll say, all we know is if we turn the ads off, the phone stops ringing. I said, well, are they actually working? Like I remember working with a plumber years ago, and he was spending $80,000 a month on ads. And I said, dude, this is really awful. You need to go and speak with Byron. And Byron looked at it and said, these guys are burning about 80% of their budget on wasted keywords and other crap. It was awful. But they had this notion of just turn the ads on and hope for the best and throw as much money at it as possible. I don't want to get off topic. Who else? Any other takeaways?
John, I got a couple of takeaways.
Yeah, go for it, dude. I'm not
One
sure.
is a rhyme, right? If you muck it up, don't muck it up, template it up. So that's your own words there about templating and not goofing up. The other thing is when you're coming to this webinar, this may be a joke, okay? When you're coming to a webinar, try to see if you can get Sony MX headphones, because a whole bunch of people are wearing Sony MX headphones.
What's that, sorry?
Try to get a Sony MX headphones for your webinars, because you got a bunch of people here wearing Sony MX headphones. That's a joke.
Oh,
Just
right.
joking around. Now,
I am wearing Sony MX headphones.
Well, you got a few other people wearing that too. So the other thing is a tip that I want to share here that you may want to include in this presentation is that make sure you ask the client for the registrar's DNS. Take a screenshot and also get a notepad file of the DNS. And before making a migration, if you can use Cloudflare, is even better because you can import the DNS, but have the DNS in hand and do that before, because if there's an email problem, they're using cPanel, whatever it is, you can prepare them and say, hey, if there's an email, you may lose email, something like that. At least you can prevent some things, but having a text of the DNS and an image of the DNS before you make any migrations is always helpful to have.
Abe, is that you?
Yes, that's me. Sorry, I got a bad case of cold here.
Oh, I was going to say that I didn't recognize the voice. Yeah, that sort of information, you can capture all of that sort of information in the questionnaire. I did upload, guys, you might want to make a note of this as well. In the resources section, there's an inventory password sheet, right? For all of my clients, I made the effort to get all of the usernames and passwords and document them in that form. I kept a copy and I gave a copy to my client. And I think I've said this before, right? I don't know how many times, and you guys, I'm sure, will experience this. You'll start a new campaign and you'll say to the client, what are the logins? And I'll say, fucked if we know. And you'll waste all of this time going around and around and around. So download that. It's in the resource section, password inventory sheet. And for anyone who picked up any of my old clients and had the luxury of getting a copy of that sheet, you owe me a coffee. Matt, did you get any what's your biggest takeaway out of that, dude?
Yeah, Corey actually articulated mine better than I would. I think it was nice to get pretty granular on like those exact tangible, like, okay, site architecture and then this and how to manage 301s and everything. So that was my biggest takeaway.
Okay, cool. Do we just want to jump into questions? That's really interesting. I heard, I didn't mind me asking that, guys, but I did see recently to go around the room and see what takeaways people got. And it's always, I find it really interesting that you cover one topic and everyone gets something different out of it. So I was just curious to ask. I'm happy to take any questions.
John, you mentioned the WP engine as raw wretched hosting. What's like what's a recommended hosting company that you would use?
If only I had $1 for every time I've been asked this question. I use Liquid Web.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I've been with them for probably 15 years, and I will not go anywhere else because their support is incredible. Anytime I've got a problem, I get on chat, guys, I've got this problem, and they will sort it out. I'm usually out of there in 5 minutes or less. It's not just the hosting and the uptime and everything else and the cheapest rate. For me, it's support. If something's fucked, I want to be able to fix it quickly.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got a client, an angry or upset client at the other end because something's broken or not working, I want that fixed fast. Having said that, like Liquid Web is not cheap. Like I think I spend about $200 and something a month on hosting, but that's for a number of different things as well as a community. Outside of that, maybe I might look at Digital Pacific in Australia. I think are quite reputable. I don't know. Is anyone else? Who do you use, Angie?
Ventura IP are better.
Who?
Ventura.
Oh yeah, I've heard good things about Ventura as well.
Yeah, plus Lightspeed hosting, I can't recommend them enough. Lightspeed is on both Digital Pacific and Lightspeed. Sorry, Digital Pacific and Ventura IP.
Yeah, we've got our own development server, so we run an interface with Run Cloud and then we use AWS.
Oh, yeah.
So we're full geeky.
That is geeky.
but we have green A's everywhere.
Yeah, we just started using Run Cloud as well.
Yeah, they're great.
AWS. Jesus.
Sydney now, so we did have to be in Singapore before, but now we're.
I will.
I would say something about AWS, guys. I host AWS on some very mission critical sites. AWS downtime and support, even if you pay for support, is not the best. I mean, as a matter of fact, we moved our servers from AWS probably to another. We are going to be moving into Google Cloud, but AWS support, they definitely have an SLA, but it's definitely once you have a downtime and they cannot reboot your EC2 instance is what they call their instances. And they will not accept blame, and there's lots of problems there with AWS. Just FYI.
This is where you realize that you regret asking the question, Anthony.
Oh, now the reason why I did that, we were looking at building a pretty expensive website about 3 months ago. Me and a couple other designers, and well, we were looking at it, and we got recommended WP Engine. We were actually looking at going there, and then you mentioned it, and I was like, "Shit, thank God we didn't." We actually, yeah,
that was one of the most awful experiences of my life.
Yeah, WP Engine, terrible. I'd avoid them at all.
Like it's completely proprietary.
Expensive.
Like it feels proprietary to me. Like I don't know if it is or not, but they don't use cPanel, and for that, I just made everything so fucking complicated.
you gotta have cPanel.
And the site, like for whatever reason, I think my internet dropped out. There's a long backstory to this. I was living in a unit. Get this, guys. I was living in a unit, and anytime someone used the lift, it would take my internet down. And I was FTPing files. I was FTPing the site up, and someone came up in the lift from the basement car park, and the internet went down. And then when it just corrupted all the files, and because I had no cPanel, and they don't want people getting access to anything on their servers. Like I didn't have FTP or anything, and it was just an absolute nightmare. Like the whole site went down, and the client was this real big guy. He was always grumpy, and he lived about 5 minutes around the corner from me. And I thought, I've got to fix this fast. And he drove this big truck too, and I thought, Christ, he's going to come through the driveway gates here, like demanding answers. It wasn't long after that I made the decision. You know, I think I'm just going to focus on training. Yeah. But I'm a big fan of Liquid Web. I love Liquid Web simply because of the support. Yeah. I actually got a photo somewhere I've been meaning to share it in the group. I've got a photo somewhere my housemate took because I just didn't. I stayed up late and then I was like, okay, well, the sun's up. May as well keep trying to sort this out. And I didn't go to bed for like, on the third day I went to bed. I was absolutely exhausted. But the good lesson in that, guys, don't do the tech stuff. Like have tech people or web developers, just pass it over. Like even now, sometimes like, when I was working with my guy, Darren, I used to say to him, dude, I don't care what needs to be done, just do it. Because he'd come back and say, oh, well, what about this configuration setting? And I can set these parameters. And what about, like, dude, that's why I'm paying you. Just go and do it. That's where you want to be. Just take care of it. And the other thing that I'll say is if you've niched down and you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, it should be so easy for them, your team. Guys, we've got another one. You know what to do? Follow the checklist. Should be that easy. The only difference, of course, will be where the client is currently hosting their site. But, if it's on something like Wix, part of that recommendation should be, all right, sort out your own hosting, get off this rented platform, do this properly. Otherwise, we can't help you. Did you have another question? Corey, did you have a question, dude? Did you just wave your hand in the air like you don't care?
I did have a question, but
You're next, Philippa.
So
go for it, dude.
It was a couple like quick things. So would you use the same page layout for the different post types? Like I think you touched on this, like service pages, about pages, project pages. Like would they look pretty much identical with like bullet points, forms, placement of the H1, subheading, and all that?
Obviously, the layout on your homepage is going to look probably a lot different to other pages for obvious reasons. All of your core pages, probably the same layout. Product pages for e-commerce are going to look different because they're going to have a different layout, obviously, as part of the storefront. Service pages, probably similar to core pages. Blog posts were probably the only difference with blog posts for me was that they were longer form content and more visual. So I would make sure, at least with the screen that I'm on, right, I would make sure that as soon as the image above just started to scroll off, the next image would appear. That helps with engagement.
Okay.
So, yeah, when I say make sure all pages look the same, there'll be differences between the page types. But just build a framework to build out templates. So you go, okay, and again, this makes it easier for you, your team, and everyone else. Guys, this is the framework we use for service pages. This is the framework we use for blog posts. That's it. Let's not, get caught up in custom web design.
Okay. I don't know if I can ask another one, but
let Philippa go next, and I'll come back to you. And just for those of you in Australia, happy Valentine's Day. Can I show you my Valentine's Day?
Right back at ya.
I want to share with you my Valentine's Day gift that my girlfriend made. It's fucking hilarious. I drink a lot of tea. Any tea drinkers here? I drink about, I probably drink about, maybe 6 to 8 cups a day, every day. And my girlfriend does crocheting, so she made me this.
Cute.
It's a cup of tea, crocheted with a little face on it.
That is so clever.
And a tea bag.
Aww.
Hilarious.
I'm jealous.
Maybe I can get it to bring the SEO ones, and I'll post them out to you guys.
John, you don't have a cat, do you?
No cats. We're in a rental, dude, so no cats. Yeah, go for it, Philippa.
I actually have about 10 questions written down. So I'll just
maybe give us your main one and then save the rest for the coaching call.
Yeah, okay. I think look, the tracking for e-commerce. Don't come at me for talking about e-commerce still. But the tracking for e-commerce is already like it's a lot of it's all there through the Shopify analytics. Would you still do tracking for things like calls and emails for ecom as well?
I think only if you feel it's necessary. That's probably a conversation that you would have to have with the client and ask them. I mean, here's something to think about. How many offline purchases are happening, right? Maybe someone has a problem. They go to Google, they search, and for whatever reason, they can't buy this red widget. So they pick up the phone and they call and they place an order over the phone. That's worth knowing about, right? So I think
Absolutely.
maybe it's just a conversation you need to have with your clients. I just stayed right away from e-commerce. It's just too many moving parts.
Yeah.
It's too much. It
is too much.
Yeah. You pick up a client and they've got 1,000 products. That's 1,000 products you've got to deal with, not just, someone booked an appointment or someone called or sent an email inquiry. I just like the simplicity of lead gen, but that's just me. I'm not trying to talk anyone out of it. I know Angie does a lot of e-commerce. Guys, do whatever you want. Just don't. I'll be listening. I'll be listening and waiting for that moment. It's like, fuck e-commerce, I'm out of here.
I'm already at that point because I'm like, there's so much to do. There's like you said, so many moving parts, so many images, so many pages.
Yeah, and like,
but when you're getting good results, they love you. It's I can just see their dollars are just going through the roof.
Like, there are just so many obstacles with e-commerce. Like, price shopping alone is an obstacle. It was a deal breaker for me.
Yeah.
Like, people are smart. They'll just go, okay, this costs $28 here. Okay, let's Google the product name. Okay, 28, 35. Oh, this place got it here for 20. Let's buy. Like, that's got nothing to do with how well optimized the site is. And then you're fighting with Amazon, and then you're fighting with lazy clients who, we just pull the feed down from the supplier. Like, guys, you got the same description as 50 other websites. It's no wonder you're not getting found. And then they give you blurry photos. Guys, we need some good photos of this product here. Oh, yeah, we'll get around to it. Oh, man, I'm out of here. See you later. It's not for me. The upside is, though, that you do get accurate sales data.
Yeah.
That's the only benefit I can see.
And then it was really easy to do it for my own e-com store because I was only accountable to myself for all that sort of thing, like good product images and.
Yeah. Well, to answer your question, that's probably a conversation you need to have with the client. Guys, you want to track emails and phone calls. There's probably no harm in doing it.
Yeah, I agree because there's the wholesale arm as well for some e-com too, which wouldn't directly necessarily come through the website. So yes, okay. Thank you. You helped me answer the question.
Plus Google Business Profile as well, if that's driving calls and stuff, like that's worth knowing about.
Yeah.
All right, Corey, we'll take you for the last question unless anyone has any other questions, or is Corey lucky last? And then Jimmy, you can go back to bed.
There's a lot of pressure. Okay, that's just a quick one. But CallRail, is there any issue with NAP info changing the number?
What's the question?
Like if their phone number is whatever it is, and then like you use CallRail because that changes the number on the website, right?
Yes. So
is there any kind of issue with, like, I guess, crawlers looking at citations and then the website phone number? That's always a concern.
I think this question has come up a few times before. I think for citations, you probably want to use the fixed number on Google Business Profile. At least this is what Ben is doing. He's using the trackable phone number on Google Business Profile because that drives a large percentage of inquiries. And on site, you got to track calls. So the number you'll get a pool of numbers. Usually it's about 3, and those numbers will cycle in and out. If you've got a client that says we don't want to track phone numbers or we don't want a different phone number on our website, well then, hey, we're not going to work together. And I know that might sound brutal, but it's really important, especially in call-heavy industries. I've had clients in the past that have pushed back. We don't want to track calls. We don't want a different phone number on the website. And then I come to them in end of month reporting and say, okay, guys, we got 6 inquiries this month and we made $800 because 95% of customer inquiries are coming through phone calls. I don't know if you watched George's video interview. He said something really interesting there that everyone should take note of. He said, we don't work with businesses that don't have or don't use a CRM. And that's the first time I've heard that. And I thought, wow, that's worth noting. You can't help businesses that are dysfunctional and they don't know what the fuck's going on at their end. So something to think about, guys. That's it.
Thank you.
I'm going to have a sip of my tea here. All right. Thanks, everyone, for coming along. Hope you enjoyed the call, and I will see everyone next week. Oh, suggestions, guys, for more topics, let me know. I'll cover them. All right.
So you said you're not doing mastermind tomorrow, is that
I'm
right?
going to put the brakes on that
Okay.
for the moment until I figure out the best approach, something that
Sure.
is affordable, that works for everyone. All
Yep,
right.
cool.
Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
And I'll see
Thank
everyone,
you.
see everyone next week.
Cheers.
See you later.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, if you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to learn more, head over to bringtheseo.com. We provide lead gen and sales training for SEO consultants wanting to automate client acquisition and onboard higher paying clients without all the stress and overwhelm.